future risk, where she's heavily involved in research and writing, a lot of longevity-related research, conducting research and publishing the same. I don't know whether Kay, you can still hear me?
I can hear you a lot better now, thank you.
Okay, that's great. So Kay is going to present this interesting topic on retired, not expired, longevity, risk, and opportunity. A lot of people, Kay, had a lot of interest in your discussion. Actually, the online community, we had a couple of people asking when you are coming on board. So that's very good for the summit. We want to hear your insights into longevity risk and some of your insights that you have picked up in the industry. So again, apologies for the delay. So you can take it up.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the introduction. I hope you can all see me okay.
Yes, I can see.
I'm not the best at tech, so can you see the presentation okay?
Yes, it's very clear.
Great. Okay, so hello everyone. Sorry I'm not actually with you today in person, but this new tech idea I think is absolutely wonderful. So I'm actually in Hartbeespoort, Northwest Province. The sun's out, it's beautiful today. So I'm really going to ask you today to enjoy some thoughts about your own personal future and those you influence. So today, my presentation is particularly about you. So first of all, look at the thoughts for today. I'm going to be looking at some notes. So if you see me moving papers around, that's what I'm doing. So we're going to have a look. We're going to do research. Of you are really the future of pensions and investment. And if you look at the meme there from Jane Goodall, what you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. So a lot of the sharing I'm going to be doing is related to 10 years of research pre and post my formal retirement, and I retired at 55. So as I say, I think a lot of our focus today is going to be rather on the individual rather than the entity, but I hope you'll be able to take some of the information you pick up today back into your respective entities, and obviously look at what you want to do for yourselves. Mostly South Africa, guys, sorry about that. But there are a lot of international aspects that have come into my research, and we'll talk about that as we go through. So we're going to also focus on people risk today. And people risk is about the attitudes and conduct of people. We've heard 2 or 3 people mentioning that already today, but I'm going to actually focus on some of the aspects there. As you work with the slides, you'll see that I absolutely love memes, whatever you want to call them, cartoons, quotes, and I'm going to introduce you to something you may not have heard of before, and that's called a marketoon. And I believe the copy of the presentation will be available afterwards. I won't focus on every item on the presentation, so you may like to get a copy of the presentation later and pick up some of the items. So let's talk about my views on longevity. And I think it doesn't just mean how long a person is going to last. I think it's how long someone or something will last. So let's have a look. They're talking here about a bucket list. Now, I'm sure all of you have a bucket list. If you don't, I can explain to you the concept. So the concept is that as you go through life, you should make a list of the things that you'd like to do later in your life. And you'll see I'm going to try and avoid the word retirement. And we'll come back to that a bit later. But look at the particular meme there and what's in the bucket. So if you look at the bucket, it's presumably fried chicken. And I think it's probably a KFC logo there with the two chickens. And the one says, will I complete my bucket list? So will I do all the things I've got on my list to do in my later years? And the other chicken says, not yours, but somebody's. So in other words, if we look at risk from different perspectives, let's consider risk from the perspective of the brand, KFC. It's being used in a cartoon. Is it a reasonable cartoon? Possibly. What would an outlet think? An outlet that sells KFC or a franchise to think of, well, I think we can see that there are different perspectives, because if the chicken's being used for KFC, they may not be completing their bucket list. And then there's always the risk of the customer. So many of you in this room will live to 100. My plan goes to age 90. And I get bored easily. So life is going to be very interesting for me for the next 25, 26 years of my life. But it's even going to be more interesting for those I'm around if I get bored. Reputation risk, of course, can destroy an individual or a company. And I think we've learned a lot about that more recently. But one of the questions to ask you is, are you embracing technology personally? One of the things we've learned very quickly with Zoom and calls and online is the favorite word, mute and unmute. Big learning for some of us, I think. Also looking at the longevity economy, where is your market? And I read something recently about longevity investments. So is that something new that we need to look at? So a bucket list is a great idea. Longevity means how long someone or something will last. But the important thing is to keep dreaming and keep updating your bucket list as you go through life. So what's today's opportunity? It really is talking about planning, be 6 years into the future. And I'll take you more through the items as we go through. We need to understand our differences and how we make decisions. Each of us will look at things differently, a product, how it's presented, and what we need or we think we need in our lives. So we want to try and improve the sphere within which we operate personally to help and support the future of others. Now you can see from the cartoon that Roger has actually made a fort in his garden, and he's obviously protecting the family, but he's borrowed the wife's roasting pan. And she's now saying, Roger, I'm going to need my roasting pan. So when you retire and you're with a partner who perhaps hasn't been used to having you around, you really need to think about your impact on their life and their roasting pan. So what is a cognitive bias? You may have heard the term, but it's very important to pick up, particularly when we're talking to a lot of different people about products and marketing. So it's a systematic error in thinking that occurs when people are processing and interpreting information in the world around them. It affects the decisions and judgments they make. So people are very much inclined to go for free things or a reward. So a couple of other examples that I found quite interesting is the status quo bias. So this is one that I think particularly applies to me. We tend to prefer things to stay the same. We've heard a lot about change today. So changes from the baseline are considered to be a loss. Now that's an interesting bias for somebody to have. But I hate it when the bank says, you must do it this way. You really need to use an app. You really have to do this. So that is status quo bias. Another one that's quite fascinating is authority bias. So we tend to believe people in authority. But remember, it could be a fake video. So is it really them talking or is it somebody else? My favorite one is the Google effect or digital amnesia. We can look up so much nowadays that we don't really need to remember a lot of things. Google's there to do it for us. I'm afraid you're going to have one little technical bit. So this is a model that we put together working with the Institute of Risk Management in 2018. And it was a technical paper. It's rather long. If you'd like to have a read of it, you can go to my website and the technical paper is available under articles. And if you want to comment or let me have your views, that would be great. But in terms of the risk we deal with in companies, we look at the effect of uncertainty around objectives. So you would have company strategies, company objectives, and you would apply risk to those, risk and opportunity. So what we tried to say is, well, what if we focus on the individual rather than the company, but use the same concept? So we've really put together a report combining risk management concepts and coaching principles. So coaching is my passion now as I am semi-retired. And I think you need to sort of have a look and say, what decisions would you like to make that are future focused in the longer term? I think with the lockdown, COVID, and thank you for the presentation earlier on the COVID response, we need to understand what is called the cone of uncertainty. And it's something that's used quite a lot in project management, but it's really saying maybe the next 5 minutes, or even probably looking at my clock, the next 15 to 20 minutes is pretty certain. There's a fair chance you're going to be listening to me. Thereafter, time and things get more and more uncertain. And as you go further into that cone of uncertainty over time, things are going to change. And they change dramatically for us all this year. I'm sure you will agree. So we need to be adaptable and resilient. And I'm going to give you a little bit more information around that as we go through. So having looked at the 8 topics around that longevity model, we put together an entity called 50 Plus South Africa, and we picked up 10 topics around that. They're the same topics as the previous model, but we've added business support and home support, and I'll explain that more to you as we go through. Now, whilst there's no doubt that your future finances, savings and wealth are key, it's really important to look at your overall future life planning. Otherwise, you might miss something critical to your overall employment. And I hope that you're going to pick up that today and it's going to make sense to you. So a lot of them are also independent. So it would be great to have enough money for your future, wouldn't it? But what if you're too sick to travel and your bucket list item was to travel the world? But unfortunately, they won't let you on the plane because, well, sorry, you're just not able to travel on a plane. So we need to look at all of the aspects around our future lives to be able to make sure that we plan appropriately. So one of the first things I'd like to focus on is information. And if you look at the marketoon, It's by a guy called Tom Fishburn. And if you get the chance to look him up on the internet, you'll see his view is that humor can be useful when you're trying to get a message across. So if you look at the marketoon here, they're in a boardroom, they're having a discussion about a product. The product is a breath mint or a sweetie. And the one guy says, but what if consumers aren't looking for a disruptive, synergized paradigm shift in a breath mint? And that is really very, very insightful, because some of the times what we see in marketing, it just doesn't make any sense. You know, if it's a plain, simple sweetie, please keep it simple, because a lot of us are not going to understand the words. We've spoken about fake news and videos. The thing that really irritates me is deliberate disinformation. We're seeing a lot of things at the moment about donations. Please help this one, please help that one. My challenge is which ones are true and which ones are fake, and that I don't enjoy. And remember authority bias in terms of information theft. If you were to receive an email from somebody you trust and they say, please click on this link, because of authority bias, it's likely that you would click on the link. And that's where the challenge comes in. We need to be extremely careful when we're looking at information, be it local, national, or international. And a lot of the aging information is from the United States, the UK, and Japan, which is where the aging is far greater in terms of numbers than it is for our continent. But look at the data and the research. Where does it come from? How many people were involved? Over what period of time were they involved? What type of people were included? Because a lot of times I see things, no, our survey shows whatever. When you go into it, the survey was 50 people and they were all based in one area. Now, to me, that's not necessarily helpful with taking what you want to do forward. The Stats South Africa Population Report, which is released in July every year, gives pretty good demographic, age and province information. So if you want to focus on South Africa specifically, it's very interesting to follow that report. So guys, accurate information is absolutely critical when you want to work on your future. So another of the 10 topics is strategy and stakeholders. And have a look at the meme here. Remember that sometimes not getting what you want is a wonderful stroke of luck. Now, sadly, I can't see your faces to see whether you actually think this is amusing or not. But how many of you have met a boyfriend or a girlfriend later on in life that you used to know and you've thought to yourself, well, gosh, isn't it wonderful that they moved on or that I moved on? So sometimes not getting what you want is a wonderful stroke of luck. So what do you want? And part of when we're doing the planning with our clients, we say, be clear what you want. If you want to be the chief executive of a particular company, say it, explain it. If you want to change your career, be clear what you want to do. How about your family? If you want to travel, and where will this happen? So do you prefer to live in a city? Where do you want to work? Where is your leisure, your football, your hobbies? Why do you want to do all these things? And a couple of people I've spoken to have said, you know, money's not the issue. And you can only play golf so many times a week. And what happens if you break a leg and you can't play golf? So why do you want to do all these things? Is it to remain relevant? Is it to earn money? When are all these things going to happen? So if you decide that specifically you want to move to another location? When do you want to do that? Have you sorted out your timelines? Who's involved? Well, last year, one of my financial advisors retired. And as I think I already explained, I don't like change. So they actually brought the new guy over to introduce him to me. Yeah, nice guy. But I trusted the other guy. I actually have two financial advisors, by the way. I don't actually set them against each other, but I do test each one. How will you go about drafting your plan? You can ask for help, you can do a draft, you can ask for comments, but please involve all of your stakeholders. And listening to your conversations earlier, one of the key stakeholders will obviously be where you've got your money. And I'm not going to talk to you all about investments and money and savings and whatever. You're the experts, you know what you're doing there. But it's important to understand all of those. Risks and opportunities, we've looked at uncertainty already. So it's important that you look at a 10-year plan and put together your goals or objectives. Favorite one, science and technology. We've heard a lot of people talking today about science and technology. I think one of the things to consider is how you invest your money for the future when you actually do retire. So what if, for example, there was a new medical innovation that came out, a particular drug, but it's only available in, let's say, the United States. And the way that you organized your investments through your pension was a regular income for life, but you have no other savings. So you could die in the next short while because you weren't able to use any of your funds for a medical innovation. So there are balances with how you do things. For those of you that have medical aid, what type of medical aid would you choose? So I think understanding the new terminology, and how it might benefit you. We heard earlier, AI, VR, 5G, 3D printing. Oh, did you know 3D printing now? They can actually 3D print a replacement bone for your body. Isn't that wonderful? I wonder how much it's going to cost though. Be careful with marketing of services and products, particularly understanding the different age groupings. Millennials, brilliant, used to it, pick it up easily. People over 75, not so easy. And they don't like change, most of them anyway. Fonts and colors and explanations. You're back to trust. If I can't read something easily nowadays, I ignore it and move on. So, what about becoming a digital nomad? Somebody that travels around the world just with their laptop and they can do their Zoom calls and business from anywhere. That sounds like good fun. I don't know how you feel about that. And also digital platforms. There's one that I've seen recently which offers HR advice and products, and companies can go into the platform, meet up with service providers, and the service all takes place online. So from the cartoon point of view, I think you understand what I'm getting at there. We all have a different learning style or possibly combinations, and it's about how we communicate with others. So some of us may be visual, you prefer pictures and diagrams. I think you've probably picked up I quite like the visual side. I also like the verbal side. Logic and social, learning new things as part of a group, I think is very good. So I prefer a combination style. What style do you prefer? And what style might your customers, clients, or even family prefer? It's important to understand the differences. Continuous learning. This is probably the most important of the 10 topics that I'm going to talk about today. Continuous learning in both work and play. And looking at the meme there, The expert in anything was once a beginner. And think about your own careers and your own things that you've done in your life. If you became a sportsman or sports person earlier in your life, you were once a beginner. There's quite an interesting book called Outliers by a guy called Malcolm Gladwell. And he says it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert. Now, I started working when I was 15 in England. I ended up in insurance at 16. And my working life to date has been approximately 48 years. So if I take 220 days at 8 hours a day, that's 84,480 hours to date. That's assuming no overtime. And I can guarantee you that I have actually done in my working life quite a bit of overtime. So does that make me a thought leader? Does it make me an expert? Not necessarily, because it depends what the thing is that we're talking about. So consider also, if you want to go into a small business, it's important to understand the business needs that you will have to run a small business. I made quite a few mistakes with my first little business, and I still have about 40 little gift bags that I'm probably never going to use. So there are some things that you perhaps need to learn. Marketing. How do you do social media for small businesses? One of the things that's very key to learn is listening skills. And you need to be interested and interesting, particularly as you get older. And we'll talk about that under social. One of the things that I've found really, really rewarding in the last while is mentoring. I'm a mentor for the senior program for the Institute of Risk Management. And I have to tell you, that is a brilliant way to share and to give back. So this is a particular fun one for me. It's called the acquire to admire syndrome. And I'm pretty sure that some of you in the room will recognize this in yourselves. So what it really means is that, and then I don't really use them. So I acquire it to admire it. More recently, that would be courses, and those can be online or actually hard copy. You can see all the items on the slides there. And also in the past, it was probably clothes, business clothes, particularly shoes and handbags. But nowadays, how often do I actually go out in business clothing? Very, very rarely now, particularly now with online presentations, etc. So one of the things that I've found is there's a lot of things coming through now about decluttering and downsizing. Well, in 1995, I was extremely fortunate as the president of the Society of Risk Managers, as it was then, to be invited to Australia to present at their conference. Now, I still have some of the clothes and shoes from that time. So I do have an acquire to admire syndrome problem. So I think I won't be decluttering anytime soon, but also I'd like to suggest to you that I'm really not qualified to advise you on this particular issue. Let's talk now about physical, mental, and spiritual health. And when people talk about health, they don't always include all three. I'm sure you all know what the differences are. Spiritual being however you see spiritual, it could be religious, it might be another form of something that actually works for you. I just love the cartoon there, where the guy said, she says it's an activity monitor for people with a sedentary lifestyle. It's called Fatbit. That's a bit rude, but I thought it was quite funny. What is gerontology and geriatrics? That is the scientific and medical disciplines that are concerned with all aspects of health and disease in the elderly, and also concerned with the normal aging process. We don't have very many gerontologists in Africa and South Africa. There are a couple, I think there's one at the universities, but that's something certainly in America that's really taking hold. Be careful with key life events. And we all know that the loss of the partner, losing your job, moving house, divorce, they are very significant. I don't think we quite appreciate how often the actual formal retirement can cause a similar amount of grief. Hearing, please, guys and girls, make sure you keep your hearing up to date. And I don't mean selective hearing, which is when you actually choose not to listen to your partner, or you could call it selective listening. I'm talking about when you sit in a room with a number of people and you have difficulty hearing what's going on. Because unfortunately, that will then impact your mental health, because you're not part of what's going on, and it's not so easy to learn. We know that lifestyle diseases are a major problem, and that is something that a lot of us can change. Also, with your eyesight, please get your eyesight checked regularly, because if you have a problem and you get it dealt with early enough, a lot of things can change. And I'm back to the bucket list. What's the point of going on your world tour if you can't see half of what you're looking at? On to social and recreation. I wonder if you know that the United Kingdom has a minister of loneliness. They identified a key problem in the UK with single people living on their own and being very lonely. Probably had quite a lot to do with the weather, but I'm not going to go there. What's an elder orphan? An elder orphan is an individual who is aging and has either no children or partner, or the children have moved out. Or the social side or the community side becomes very important. Now, just to say to you, I actually met my husband online on a dating site, probably about 14 years ago now. So that is a great way to meet people, but there are also risks involved. So again, let's understand the risks and the opportunities around what it is we want to do. So one of the things that you may do if you have a chance and you enjoy reading, there's another book called The 100-Year Life by Linda Grattan and Andrew Scott. And they talk about a good life being about family, friends, skills, knowledge, physical and mental health. So some of the things that we've spoken about already, but they call these things intangible assets, which I think is rather lovely. So you will have your financial assets, you'll have your physical assets, like perhaps your car, your house, and all those things that I've got hidden in my cupboards. But what about those intangible assets? And have you learned enough skills around those to actually be an interesting person? Back to listening. You're going to hear this quite often from me. You need to learn to listen, let people talk, and ask open questions. So an open question in coaching terms is something that doesn't really have a yes or no answer. So somebody might say, are you feeling good today? You can answer yes or no. Rather, put something together that actually gives them the opportunity to answer a bit better. Physical location. Okay, so you've got my 50 plus South Africa logo there with what's your view? Where would you like to live for your next move? Whether it's about retirement or whether it's about changing your location. I was very fortunate to be involved in a rather interesting insurance claim for my first job in South Africa. I was a claims broker, and it was for the Barlow Rand Group at the time, and also Richards Bay Coal Terminal. And in 1984, Cyclone de Moina hit in the Natal area. And it was fascinating to work with that claim, particularly as it was seen as one event in terms of certain insurance covers and not in terms of others. So what is a 100-year floodline, guys? A 100-year floodline is not that it's going to take 100 years to happen. 100 years could actually be tomorrow. I actually live on the borders of the Hollebeersport Dam, and within our estate, we do have a 100-year floodline. And part of the rules around building close to the edge involve actually having your property on stilts. So what about climate change and beachfront properties? Any of you want to sort of move to the coast and live right on the beach? Well, be careful, because over the next 20 years or so, that water may be rising. And trust me, your insurance is not going to cover your move related to that. Quality of life is critical. I read a wonderful report about an old lady being asked why did she choose the 3rd floor flat in a retirement home. And she said, well, I don't walk very well, so I spend a lot of time reading and looking out of the window. So the view from the 3rd floor was much better than the 2nd or the 1st. So back to what's your view? Homeowners associations, trustees, you need to make sure they're up to it and doing what they should be doing. And if you're going to relocate, so you're going to move to another country, if you have the opportunity, please test it first. Take 3 or 6 months, rent something, go and have a look and see if you like it before you spend a lot of money making that move. So how about some of the words that are used? And I'm going to ask you as a group, is it time to retire the word retired? I'm retired. Do I look retired? What does a retired person look like? So in terms of the dictionary definition, retirement is defined as no longer being part of the workforce and living off savings and investments. And they say it's generally a time where you spend more time pursuing leisure activities. Now, it's nice to pursue leisure activities, but you also need to keep your brain going. And for a lot of people, it's still important to earn an income. So what about the old lady in the retirement home? All of the carers kept calling her sweetie, and their favorite comment was calling all of the residents sweetie. So after about a month, she just lost it. And she said, my name is Kay. Please address me by my name. I'm not your sweetie. So we sometimes need to be careful. And by the way, LOL, everybody know LOL, laugh out loud? As you get older, it doesn't mean that anymore. It means little old lady. So I'd like you to reconsider the word. Who am I now? So you've heard a lot about the kind of stuff that I'm doing. Who am I now? Well, life is a gift, and it offers us privilege, opportunity, and responsibility to give something back. So who am I now depends on the need. I'm fairly fortunate that I don't have to work all the time. So a lot of the stuff that I do involves helping others. So it definitely depends on what's happening at the time and whether it's fun. But one of the things to remember is don't let your profession or your role define your identity. So I was a general manager, financial services at a large institution. The day that I retired, who was I? Was I a retiree? Was I a consultant? Be careful about defining yourself. I must say some professional institutes have embraced more experienced members, and others have totally ignored being retired or have ignored the retirees. There are 2 institutes that I no longer belong to. So choice is the key. I look now mostly at small businesses and helping individuals. What's my point? Please look at your own life, your friends and relatives, your teams, and how you react personally and in business. Please consider age discrimination and promote the rest. Appreciate others to, how can you appreciate for others what you've learned today? Be interested and interesting. I can't say that enough. So the path is seldom a straight line, and this is another version of uncertainty. What are we working on currently at Future Risk? Again, issues around our future sunrises. Technology Risk 50 essay is about supporting and training older people in technology issues. A couple of things on residential estates, not specifically retirement estates, but residential estates. And this is the kind of thing that we like to focus on, which is our future sunrises. So, watching my time, I'd just like to appreciate today everything that I'm showing you on the slide there, but particularly to the organisers and the tech support for today. And I'd just like to suggest to you that your first thought in the morning should be thank you. It's important to be grateful for what you have and to look at the things that you would like in terms of your future planning. So I hope you've enjoyed today, and hopefully I think we might have time for a couple of questions, but I'm going to rely on Stephen to tell us that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Kay. We will open the floor for any questions. Do we have any questions for Kay? Any questions, comments? Okay, just wait.
Thanks. Okay, it's Nicola Cominos from South Africa as well. I'm from the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. I didn't catch the name of the company you mentioned that gives support for over 50s on technology, but I thought that that's a really awesome initiative. I think one of the key things for me is intergenerational leadership, and how do you make sure that you don't exclude some generations with, especially looking at COVID and how we've moved to technology. And I think also for us all to keep up with the younger generations as we see Gen Zs coming into the workplace and how they would potentially even change the way we work. So what are the different initiatives that you propose that one looks at? I mean, the over 50s I think is really great, but how do you address those sort of intergenerational challenges?
Guys, I'm awfully sorry I lost most of that. Can you still hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you, okay? Did you get the question?
I'm sorry, I just heard the end part about how we're going to do something for the over 50s. I think that each particular entity, I'm sorry, I'm really not catching you. Perhaps the questions could be addressed in the chat box and I can pick them up for you later and we can forward them through to the delegates.
Okay, we can do that. Nicole, I wanted to find out about the organization first that is helping the over 50s on tech. Did you get that?
That is very much a new thing that we're working on, and probably would be something quite useful for a corporate social responsibility project or something along those lines. So it's very much in the startup stage. There is a Facebook page, and we started to work on it. We've got the basics around it, but we haven't taken it too much further as yet. So if anybody's interested, they're welcome to drop me a mail and I can share some information.
That's great. Do we have another comment? Comment, question? Okay, so I think we are good. So, okay, thank you very much for making time. We really appreciate. I've got a couple of people online that want to get your details. I will pass those to you. And thank you very much. We will talk to you soon.
Pleasure. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you. Let's appreciate Kay. Okay, so I think we will just take a short break as we prepare the next panel. Nicola is here; she's in that panel. Sandeep is also here, and we would love to look at universal pension systems and how that can be used in Africa. We want to look at sustainability in these pension systems. I'm sure Kenya has done something in that regard, and other countries as well. So we will get our other panelists from Zambia and Ghana also to talk about that. We want to get views from all these countries and see whether universal pension systems, post-retirement healthcare systems can work and how they can be funded. Thank you. So if we can take a short break just for tea as we get the other panelists to come on board. Then I'll get Nicola and Sandeep to join us after they have their coffee break. Thank you very much. Same place where we had the tea. If you want, you can take your tea and coffee, you can come with it here, so that we don't affect the program for the evening. Thank you.